I don't know, the whole hearing right now feels kind of surreal to me. It's almost like we're being subjected to a very elegant gaslighting here.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Tuckshop Talk. I am your host, JP, and here we talk about everything education and the culture that makes it. So this week's big story was the confirmation hearing of Linda McMahon. Yep, McMahon, those McMahons. You are right. As crazy as it sounds, she did not perform horribly, but I did pick the opening clip for a reason, because this whole thing is happening at the backdrop of a party that says they don't want the Department of Education to exist. So it's a very strange thing to interview someone to be the head of a department that will soon be non-existent if they have their way. So the whole thing was a little strange. She's right. So there were all the usual hits. There was school choice, there was vouchers, states' rights, indoctrination, anti-Semitism on college campuses, the usual slew. They are nothing if not consistent. But there are a couple of things that I think are worth pointing out. She advocated for some things that it's hard to see how they live together. So, and the parts for me that was the most interesting was sort of her misunderstanding or lack of understanding in general about vouchers and how they work. And I will say this about vouchers. I think this is their end goal. And I've thought that for a while, but this week was the first time I've heard someone explain it so clearly, what their ultimate objectives are. Listen to this.
If you're in a state that has a school choice program already, and we're now to the point where over half of them do, and most of them are education savings accounts, and most of them started off for kids with special needs, in fact, if you're in one of those states, you could easily envision a family getting an ESA, enrolling in private school, and then under this proposal, also being able to tap in to their funding under IDEA and topping off that amount to get additional services. So you could certainly envision that situation. And we're to the point, by the way, quick non sequitur, if Texas gets school choice this year, which finally it looks like they're going to do, we're going to be at the point where over half of all kids across the country have access to private school choice. So this is happening.
So again, in that video, you see one, the per pupil spending at the federal level is little to none. And so you have to wonder what is all the emphasis on K-12 if this is how little you invest in it. First thing, $2,000 a year in terms of services. As somebody who has provided services, $2,000 a year, and if you're a parent of a child with special needs, you know this, is not going to last you very long at all. Second issue is that she mentions you can have a voucher, in her ideal world anyway, you'd have a voucher and you could pay for private schooling and then also have access to your IDEA dollars. Except IDEA and all the federal civil rights laws apply to public institutions, not private ones. So I think there is some conversation that needs to happen here about what they think vouchers are and how they want civil rights rules to apply going forward. I personally am for it. So I think this is great. If she says every school, regardless of what's going on, is required to follow federal civil rights, I'm sold personally. But that was not Linda McMahon's understanding.
I have only 2 minutes, and I just want to follow up. Do you believe that any school benefiting from taxpayer dollars should be required to follow federal civil rights laws?
Schools should be required to follow the laws.
Anybody getting taxpayer dollars. And so that's good. So private schools should not be able to turn away a student with a disability or a student based on their religion or their ethnicity or race.
Well, private schools aren't taking federal dollars.
But I'm saying,
so they have the ability to say that if they do not believe that they
receive them,
if they believe that they cannot best serve that student and they're not taking federal dollars, then they have the right not to accept that student.
But I'm speaking specifically when we talk about, there's a lot of conversation about vouchers. If private schools take federal dollars, can they turn away a child based on a disability or religion or race?
Well, I think that there are also some public schools who are saying that they don't have the.
Really just a
that-
yes or no.
No, it's not. It really
Oh,
isn't.
For me, if you want to
If you-
follow up, because I'm kind of running out of time.
Okay, I'd be happy to follow, and I'd look forward to following up with you to discuss that. Thank you very much.
Okay, because this is one of the big concerns that we hear about.
That was another jaw-dropping moment for me. It's like vouchers are taxpayer funds, but she knows she can't say that because private schools, a big part of their operation is not having to be held accountable in the same way public schools are held accountable. So the vouchers open a whole Pandora's box that way, and I will be here with you to figure out how that works going forward. But I am for the version of, fine, if you get a voucher, all the rules apply. I don't think they really want that. So we'll see how that goes. And I'll end with where I think this ultimately ends up once all is said and done, and it's not good. But I will tell you what I think is going to happen. I was in South Asia in the late 2000s, and I volunteered there with an organization that worked in education, working with parents of very young children, like working on things like phonics and teaching them how to read and sort of like getting them ready for kindergarten, because there wasn't an abundance of it available. But this particular country had a school system that tended to flow like this. You had private schools, public schools, and government schools. And it sounds weird to you because you're like government, public, because for us, we think, what's the difference? Public schools are government schools, right? They're free. Now, in a lot of other places, I'm Trinidadian, but in Jamaica, they also have what they call school fees. So if you're K to 12, you pay tuition. That's not a system I grew up in, but that's what happened in a lot of places. And it's also what happened in this place. So public schools mean you can go so long as you can afford it. Now, the fee scales across schools are wild. I mean, it could be super low, super high, and everything in between. So you're left with having to make a choice out of that. But that kind of model works very well in a densely populated urban area. It does not work so well if you live, in the Midwest somewhere or in Alaska or any other rural part of the country. So their breakout was the public, private, and government schools. And the government schools were meant to, and this is in India, if I didn't mention that. So the government schools were enacted and were supposed to be because it is free, it was supposed to be for people of the lowest caste, right? There's no official caste system in India anymore. But like we know here in America, passing a law doesn't necessarily change the facts on the ground in the same way. So the government schools were occupied fundamentally by people of the lowest caste. And there was nothing in the schools. There were no desks in some places. I did go see a couple. And the disregard was clear. There was no investment of any kind. They'd show up and there'd be no teachers and all of this sort of thing. And I think that is what is going to happen here if Republicans get their way and their version. And to an extent, if liberals continue feeding into a system of segregation via private and independent schools, I think it'll all shake out to be the same or close enough to be a disaster either way. So thank you for watching. I will see you next week. Be sure to check out our all the time sponsor, me, over at the Tuckshop.com. And in the meantime, keep talking.